This week's Corp was brought to you by LinkedIn. Hiring isn't as simple as putting an ad in the paper or posting to a job board. When you're juggling hiring with everything it takes to grow your business, it's important that you reach the right candidates at the right time. That's where LinkedIn comes in. We actually are posting on LinkedIn right now. Barstool always posts on LinkedIn. If you're an employer, you need to be using LinkedIn because over 600 million members visit LinkedIn to connect, learn, and grow as professionals and discover new job opportunities. That's how LinkedIn can make sure your job post gets in front of people you want to hire, people with the right hard and soft skills you're looking for, things like collaboration, creativity, adaptability. LinkedIn does the legwork to match you to the most qualified candidates so you can focus on hiring the person who have a big impact on your business. A hire is made every 8 seconds on LinkedIn. That's happened like 10 times in this ad read. A hire, boom, a hire, boom. Every single 8 seconds. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can pay what you want, and the first $50 is on them. Visit linkedin.com/thecorp. Again, that's linkedin.com/thecorp to get $50 off your first job post. Terms and conditions apply. If you're looking for new employees, if you're looking to get connected on LinkedIn, go to linkedin.com/thecorp, and the first 50 is on them. linkedin.com/thecorp. Okay, here's Erica Nardini and A-Rod.
You're listening to The Corp, presented by Barstool Sports.
What's up, Erica?
What's up?
It's great.
Are you going first or am I?
You go first.
Okay. So thank you to the Milken Institute for having us. I'm Erica Nardini. I'm the CEO of Barstool Sports. And I'm proud to be here with our partner and my friend, Alex Rodriguez. Most of you know Alex as a legendary athlete and a world-class and world champion baseball player. I'm a Red Sox fan, so I had other adjectives that I would have used for Alex. But what you may not know is that Alex is also an entrepreneur. He's an investor in dozens of companies. He is a media personality, and he is the host of our #1 podcast together called The Corp, which explores entrepreneurship, it explores winning, it explores failure. And it's our pleasure to give you a glimpse of that today.
Thank you, Erica. It's my pleasure to introduce Erica, who is my partner and everybody's boss. She comes from a very definitive, trailblazing background, comes from very traditional brands like Microsoft, AOL, Yahoo. And then what was interesting about her taking the CEO job at Barstool, they interviewed 74 men and one woman. She was the last one to be interviewed, and she got the job, which I thought was extraordinary. But when I think about my partner, Erica, I don't think about a woman who's a CEO. I actually think about one of the best CEOs out there that's aggressive, that's humble, that's assertive, and that is always on the other side of the phone to talk about good issues, difficult issues, and everything in between. Under her leadership, and I don't need you to confirm or deny, you could deny if you want, they've raised money at Barstool at about $100 million valuation, and it's truly a rocket ship. Since you've come on board, you've basically doubled your team, and everything is looking incredibly strong for you. But I do want to share this first experience that I had with you before, as we started talking about our partnership. And I got in my first phone call with you, and Jeff Lee, my CEO, was on the phone, and he had been going back and forth with you quite a bit. And I heard you for the first 2.5 minutes, and the minute I hung up, we had a very positive conversation. I didn't even know what the numbers were. And I said, Jeff, make sure you get this deal done. I really like Erica. And it was your tone. It was, you're not sprinting to no, which I think a lot of people, they can't wait to tell you no and 5 reasons why it won't work. I felt like you wanted to figure out how do we get to yes. And every thought we brought out there to you, you figured out a way like, okay, let me think about that. I think we can do this, we can do that. I just really enjoyed the back and forth, so it was a great experience.
Awesome. So we're here, we're going to talk about winning culture and the transition from sports to business and business to sports. So I'll start with a question for Alex, which is, one of the things I love best about Alex is that he's very open. I think you are the student of the game, and it doesn't matter what the game is. But it also means that you've defied a lot of stereotypes. And I think that we're moving into a world where identity and stereotyping matters more than it used to. So, my question for you is, how do you do it? How do you think about the game? How do you think about defying stereotypes? How do you think about building your business, your personal brand, the companies you're invested in, whether it's in real estate or health and wellness or consumer goods? How do you think about that?
Yeah, I think about it by, knowledge is power, right? And it's 10,000 hours. You have to practice the game. I played 25 years and did a lot of great things and had some tough moments, won one world championship in 23 years. And not because the other 22 years we had bad teams. We had some great teams, but it's really effing hard to win. It truly is. It is hard to win in business, in baseball, as a parent, as a friend, as a partner. It's hard, and it puts a lot of hard work. You gotta have passion, you gotta enjoy it, you gotta have incredible discipline. Jack Ma just came out with a controversial statement a few weeks ago where he said, young kids should train 9-9-6. And everyone's like, what the hell is 9-9-6? 9 to 9, 6 days a week. Mm-hmm. And it was very controversial, but if you want to do great things, it's not going to be 9 to 5 and just check in and check out. Same goes for sports. So I've tried to take my competitive advantage, which is the will to win, the grit, and then I've aligned myself with great partners. I've always said the greatest partnership will be if a young skinny kid from Michigan, University of Michigan, comes back and says, I'm going to be quarterback, I'm going to go out and win 5 or 6 titles. And then he matches up with a skinny kid from Omaha who has a crew cut and says, I'm going to go out and invest a lot of money. If those two kids come together, they're going to have a world championship.
Especially if they play for the Patriots.
Tom Brady and Warren Buffett, right? And if you can get that intersection between a great athlete who makes a shitload of money from age 20 to 30 to a guy that's the world's greatest investor and understands compounding interest over time, that's a winning formula.
I totally agree. I love that. One of the things that I've learned from Alex, and I take to heart at Barstool, is one of the things you say a lot is the world loves 5s. And if you're a 1, the world pulls you up. And if you're a 10, the world pulls you down. And I've seen that at Barstool Sports. We were a nobody. We weren't on the scene. There were 12 people in 2016. We now have 160 people. We are extremely disruptive. We got pulled up, and we also get torn down, and we do the same. How do you think about that in your world?
Oh, I mean, that's just par for the course, especially, sports and business are a lot alike. Working for George Steinbrenner, I realized that we're playing for the ultimate Goliath. And that's an interesting role because I come up with single mother, 2 jobs, Boys and Girls Club kid, and forever, you're this underdog, and that's one role. And then when you go and you play for Goliath, that's another role. But I think ultimately, slow and steady wins the race, and it does in sports and it does in business. I think too many people are in a hurry. I do believe that the last century you needed a lot of muscle. I think this century you're going to need wisdom and love, mm-hmm. and that's how I try to go about it. But I have a question for you, Erica. When it comes to growth, right? You think about, you've gone from small to 160. Mm-hmm. We're probably here in another year, you're going to be at 260. Mm-hmm. My question to you is, how do you keep that kind of small feel, boutique feel, as you grow, and how do you keep that kind of winning culture?
Yeah, it's hard. I think about it all the time. I don't know if anyone watches Barstool Sports, but it's a reality show as much as it is a media company and a lifestyle brand. And we have people piled on top of one another in our office. It's disgusting. It's like an instant case of hepatitis. It's disgusting. Truly disgusting. But there's a magic in it because everyone is so close. Mm-hmm. And we don't have an email culture. I came from a world where when you're at a very big company, it's an email culture. It's a CC your boss and his boss and duke it out culture. And we don't have that. We are an underdog company. We have a very big drive to win, similar to you in a lot of ways. So from my vantage point, keeping things close is incredibly important. Keeping things honest and not buying your bullshit and being critical, even when you win, being critical of how you won is extremely important. And I think that is a large part of it. I also think, to the 996 example, one of the things that has happened at Barstool is we have organically grown and found an extraordinary amount of talent. Dan Katz, who is Alex's co-host on The Corp, is one of the most phenomenally talented people at Barstool Sports. He is also an exceptionally hard worker, and he is self-made. No one taught him how to edit, no one taught him how to host, no one taught him how to produce. And one of the things that I'm finding is that the apprenticeship model is a grit model because you're taught the way by someone else who has a work ethic and a passion and a commitment that's as strong as the one you want to grow. And so, as we move on to being 200 employees and $200, $300 million company, making sure that we institutionalize that apprenticeship and that apprenticeship model is, in my mind, incredibly, incredibly important. The other thing I think is important with it is that I think perfection is dead. I think the pace of social media, the pace of content, looking for perfection as a media company is a fool's task, mostly because it doesn't exist, your consumer's not going to wait for it, and it's a lie, because life isn't perfect, things aren't perfect. So grit is also about being in the fight and being in the struggle and showing it for what it is, and sometimes it's great and sometimes it's not so great. So those are also values that we'll keep close.
And as a leader of a great company, when it comes to text and email culture, what is the right protocol?
So I get a lot of heat for this, but we're pretty constant. I think one of the things, and you can relate to this, when you work in the internet or you work in sports, it's nights and weekends. It's just the reality. That's when the games are on. That's when Games of Thrones is playing. That's when culture is happening. And if you want to be the best, you have to be the fastest and the smartest, and in our case, the funniest at covering that. So we have a large text culture as a company. It's fast. We have a very young employee base. And my experience is if you're employing, the vast majority of Barstool employees are under the age of 25. They're not reading email. They're definitely not picking up the phone, but they're texting like a madman or madwoman. So we have a very constant communication culture, but it is extremely informal, and it is very short.
Great.
You going next or me?
Go ahead, you go.
All right. One of the things I also think is interesting to talk about winning is part of winning is losing. And my biggest takeaway, we've done one season of The Corp. We are finishing our second season of The Corp, of which this will be a part. And what I took away from Mike Francesa and Howard Schultz and Michael Rubin and the incredible people who we've had the privilege of talking to is how they lost. And I love that, and failure and shame and the will to pick yourself back up again. And I think you have a great story in that. You've transitioned yourself in that. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, look, I think I love losing because it gives you an opportunity to learn. And I actually feel that when you win, a small part of you dies.
Yep.
And when you lose, a small part of you lives.
Yep.
But I played for 23 years. When people talk about my career highlights, they immediately go to the championship in 2009 or the home runs or the RBIs. What people forget to tell you is that I'm 5th all-time, Stuart, 5th all-time in the history of the game of strikeouts. So that means that I have a PhD in failing. But it also, that's a lot of strikeouts. But it brings me great joy to say that my good friend Reggie Jackson's #1. And I remind him all the time. But it also means that I have a master's in getting back up.
Yep.
And I think the difference between the good and the great are the ones that can really take a punch and absorb it and not be an idiot and say, oh, I can take one, hit me another one. But really can take it and learn from it and pivot and really take that opportunity to the next level. And I think through sports, one of the reasons, and look, we have over 200 people that work at A-Rod Corp, and one of the reasons why we believe in hiring a lot of great men and women that are former athletes is because in many ways, they're not used to punching a clock.
Yep.
They're used to a winning culture. And I came up in the New York Yankee clubhouse where there's 25 of us, and it was really, really important to make sure that every person that walked into that clubhouse was humble, was coachable, not necessarily, look, IQ, yeah, we want really IQ. EQ is really important, but the most important is LQ, and that's love. And if you do things with love and passion and understanding, I think you have a bright future.
I love that. Tell me a little bit about, and us about A-Rod Corp itself. How do you think about A-Rod Corp? How do you look at the investments that you're making? What's the DNA of the positions that you hold? And how does that harken back to what you've done?
Yeah, so A-Rod Corp is a company, but call it almost like a family office, small private equity shop, where we've invested in over 15 companies. Our legacy company is our real estate holdings, in which I started with a small duplex with a $48,000 down payment. At the time, many, many years ago, I did not have a lot of money. So, what are the two things that every kid from Miami does when they sign a contract at a high school? Well, one, they get a nice wheels, they get a nice car, and two, you buy a Rolex. So I had to go into my safe, and I had two of them. So I sold a couple of my watches in the market, raised some money. I did an autograph show, raised some more money. That was my first down payment to my first duplex in Miami. Sold that for double a couple years later, and grew that portfolio to over 10,000 apartment units in 14 states in the southeast quadrant of the US, all secondary and tertiary market. Over the last, I would say, 5 years, we've deployed about $250 million of equity. Our net returns to our partners, to our LPs, have been north of 30%. And that's kind of our legacy business. I feel that as an overall thesis in A-Rod Corp is we don't go play basketball and then go find an operator, or we don't go play football. What we do is we first go find Michael Jordan, then we play basketball. Mm-hmm. Then I go find Tom Brady, and then we go play football. I caught the best break of my career in 2008 when I always say Sam Zell had a third base coach and he let him go, and I found him. His name is Stuart Zook. He's been in the business 40 years. Stuart and I, since he came to A-Rod Corp, we've bought 82 deals. We've pushed on 3 and made money on 79. I wish I could say I had something to do with it. I have very little to do with it. Stuart's here. Raise your hand, Stuart. He's one of the best real estate investors I've ever been around. And I keep giving him 5-year extensions. I said, you're not retiring. I know you've been in the game 40 years, but you and your wife, you're staying with me forever. So Stuart's been great. And then we've gone into consumer. We've gone into beauty. It's such a changing world. Mm-hmm. Part of being an athlete, I think, is you're able to pivot and not fall in love with your ideas. Again, part of striking out a lot, you have to get up and do it again. So we do stuff in media, entertainment, consumer. We have big holdings all over the U.S. and Mexico in health and wellness. So we're growing, and we look at things differently. One of the things we do at A-Rod Corp is we do massive training, and it takes us a long time to invest into our company. One of the things we're going to implement next year is when we bring people in, over 5 years, we're going to take care of all their college debt, right? We want to bring that health care. We want to make sure that things that Howard Schultz has done in the business world, we want to adapt some of the really good and move from there.
That's awesome.
Question for you is, you live in a world of a lot of boys.
Yep.
You came up in Boston loving sports. Do you ever feel, because as an athlete, you kind of feel like, am I good enough? Do you ever feel as a woman, am I good enough to compete at this level?
With the boys?
Just in business, being a CEO.
I don't worry about the boys, but I do think about it in business, certainly. I grew up kind of a scrappy kid. My parents really believed in education, and the big joke in my household was my brother and I were allowed a half hour of TV a week, and we had to duke it out over that half hour of TV. And it was great learning on negotiation, but if you weren't watching the half hour of TV, you could basically stack wood or play sports, and that's basically all we did. So I'm moderately culturally irrelevant of what happened in the late 70s and 80s because I didn't get to watch it, but it's made me curious about culture, and I think, I don't think about gender at work. I think that's one of the best pieces of advice I give to women, which is if you're thinking about your gender in your workplace, it means that something's holding you back or making you feel insecure or framing your reference to what you're doing. Like, I just like to work. I love to work. I love what we're building at Barstool Sports. I love the disruption. I love just going for it. And I think that any athlete, any successful business person, any successful person just goes for it. And I think that's been key to our success. And then the other piece is just surrounding myself with people who are better than me. Dave Portnoy, who's the founder of Barstool Sports, is brilliant. He is better than me in 1,000 ways. There are ways that all of our personalities, all of our product people, our technology people, our sales people, our content people are just better than everyone else around them. And one of the challenges I feel like we're living through is we're growing so fast that the right people for phase 1 aren't necessarily the right people for phase 2 and aren't necessarily the right people for phase 3. Now, some people can rock the curve, and that's so exciting, and I feel that I've had the good fortune and haven't wanted to fail, so I've really tried myself to try to follow the curve. But I also think, there are certain people who are meant for things at certain stages, and that's okay too. And so we think about that a lot, and we try to balance it and make sure that we're looking ahead to what can happen in 1 year or 3 years or 5 years, and also cognizant of what's going to happen to individual people and the business within the next 6 months. And that's a constant tension, but it's a really good tension, and I think it's a good tension for any company that wants to grow. One of my frustrations when I worked at big media companies was that one is no one used the product. So I remember sitting in big conference rooms with a lot of people dressed like people here today, and we would ask, who used the homepage today, or who used this product today, or who read that today? And the answer was mostly always no one. And I think that if you're not using your product
Agreed.
and loving your product and maniacal about your product, you're fucked, because you don't actually care about what you're creating the way your consumer is going to care. And I think that's what's exciting. Whether you're playing baseball or you're building a business or you're making a video, you've got to think about how your fan reacts to it, and you've got to have people who want to make that happen.
I'm laughing because I heard you say fuck for the 4th time, and I realize you are from Boston.
I can't.
I recognize that tone in Fenway Park. It's getting flashbacks, and I'm with my pinstripes, so I'm really getting weird.
You can't escape us.
Part of, isn't that the truth? Part of the truth, can't even talk. You got me off frazzled. I feel like I should get a bat. Part of winning culture, and again, I bring a lot of the principles that I've learned about being a world champion on the field to business. And one of the things that I've learned is, in order to have a winning culture, I believe is my 80-20 rule.
Yep.
Now, you have a 90-10, I want to
Yep.
hear about that, but my 80-20 rule is essentially teammates that do 80% of the work and really want 20% of the credit. The opposite will kill you. And really is about spreading the ball around and sharing and saying what you do and doing what you say with incredible alignment. There's a lot of shooters out there that don't want to pass the ball. I always say it's not fun to get rich by yourself. That's pretty lonely, right? The idea is, if you make $10, why wouldn't you want to give your team 1 or 2 and then go do it again and go do it again? They feel that if they make 10 and I keep 10, that ultimately I'm going to be better. You're not. It's going to be shorter. So if there's one thing you can learn from sharing the ball, when we win a championship, I believe that, yeah, we're drinking champagne, but it shouldn't just be Jeter and A-Rod and Mariano Rivera drinking champagne. The bat boy should get a little taste of champagne, not Coors Light, because that kid is going to taste the sweetness of that champagne and say, I want to get to that sea level, and one day I want to get my own bottle like A-Rod,
Yeah.
right? So it's important to incentivize even the young ones, and we do that very well at A-Rod Corp, and I'm proud of it. Tell me a little bit about your 90-10 rule.
Sure. So I have a different 90-10. One of the things that I've found in business is that there are 90% players and then there's 10% players. And the 90% players are the people who show up every day and they do everything by the book. They practice, they study, they rehearse, they respond promptly to something. They're diligent, they're conscientious, they're courteous. And they make the machine go. And 90% players aren't always the most brilliant people. There is brilliance in that 90%, but these are the people that make a machine work, a team work, a company work. a family work, it doesn't matter. I think that there's the people who are the day in, day out moving the ship forward. What I also love and what I'm personally attracted to, because I'm probably more a 90% player, is the 10%. And the 10% people, generally in my experience, aren't rule followers, and they're not going to show up for 90% of the things you ask them to do, and they're not going to follow up, and they're not going to play by the rules, and they're not going to be conscientious or diligent or any of the words I used. But what they are brilliant. And at Barstool in particular, we have found this collection of people who have true brilliance and who haven't actually ever been trained how to work in a system. I was very formally trained in media and in the internet. At Barstool, when I came to Barstool, there was 12 people. They blogged from their bedrooms and their houses. No, there wasn't ever an office, there wasn't an email system, there wasn't a P&L, but they were all brilliant in their own right. And so what I've really sought to do is how do you pair the 90% with the 10%, where the 10% creates vision and an explosion and a spark that the 90% can go carry forward. And I think that that's great chemistry. And it's part of it's managing the frustration of the 10% think that the 90% are wasting their time or they're conformist or whatever it may be, and the 90% are just aggravated that the 10% guys aren't pulling their weight. But in reality, it's how you put those two things together.
We'll get back to Erica Nardini and A-Rod, but quickly a word from our friends at Squarespace. The Corp is brought to you by our friends at Squarespace. From websites and online stores to marketing tools and analytics, Squarespace is the all-in-one platform to build a beautiful online presence and run your business. You can turn your cool idea like we had mjverslebron.com.net into a new website with awesome templates created by world-class designers. They have everything you need to create a beautiful modern website, showcase your blog, work, or publish content with powerful blogging tools to help tell your story and share updates with your readers. Promote your physical or online business, sell products and services of all kinds, use customizable galleries to display images and videos in unique ways, and there's free and secure hosting with nothing to patch or upgrade, and 24/7 award-winning customer support. Check out squarespace.com/thecorp for a free trial when you're ready to launch. Use the offer code TheCorp to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. And you need to be online right now, and you got to do it with Squarespace because they have the best stuff out there. Squarespace.com/thecorp for a free trial when you're ready to launch. Use the offer code TheCorp. Save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. We're also brought to you by our friends at Roman. Listen, erectile dysfunction is more common than you might think. 52% of men over 40 will experience erectile dysfunction at some point, and about 75% of those men don't seek treatment. Well, Roman is where you can go get that treatment, and you can do it very easily, comfort of your own home. With Roman, you get expert medical care for ED right in the comfort and privacy of your home. Everything is online, so it's convenient, discreet to contact a doctor about prescription medication. Getting started is simple. Just go to getroman.com/corp and complete an online visit with your medical history and symptoms. A licensed physician will evaluate your online visit and let you know within 24 hours if medication is right for you. If prescribed by the doctor, Roman delivers genuine medication right to your door with free 2-day shipping. Just go to getroman.com/corp, get a free online visit and free 2-day shipping. That's getroman.com/corp to get started with a free online visit. That's getroman.com/corp. Guys, don't be ashamed. You can get help, and you can do it discreetly from the comfort of your own home. If you go to getroman.com/corp, that's a free online visit, free 2-day shipping, getroman.com/corp. Okay, Erica Nardini and Alex Rodriguez.
So Erica, you and I are CEOs that we like to get in the weeds.
Yes.
But I always feel that I have two main responsibilities as a CEO and the leader of my company. Number one is to go out and search the world for the world's greatest talent. Undeniable. And number two is to create a great culture. And then after that, I get the hell out of the way and let the great team, give Michael Jordan the ball and let him shoot. When it comes to you, what do you think are your main responsibilities as a CEO? And when somebody walks into your office and they want a job with Barstool, what are the qualifications you're looking for, or qualities?
Yeah, I think I have a bunch of jobs, like being the janitor. Like, we're moving tomorrow. The Barstool office is moving tomorrow, and I'm just nagging people that we have a red dumpster outside the office, and I'm like, have you thrown away your stuff? Have you thrown away your stuff? But I would say my main jobs as a CEO of Barstool is, one, to protect Barstool. I think that there is something rare that was created in this company that will never be created again. Whether you like it or hate it, there is something about this place. So one is to protect it. Two is to steward it forward and to evolve it. And to your point, think about where's the vision of where we can go. And three is to make sure people are well-adjusted and high-performing and feel great about what they're doing and rewarded for that, so culture. So I agree with those three things. We get, every summer we have 12 interns at Barstool Sports. This summer we had 5,500 applications for those 12 spots.
Wow.
So there are a lot of young kids, college kids who want to work for Barstool Sports, and there's a lot of people who DM me or email me or tweet me about coming to work for Barstool. And I read them all because I'm curious. And mostly people say, you should hire me. I'm great, you should hire me. And I'm like, I don't know if you're great or not. Why should I hire you? So the things that I care about when people come to Barstool is, do you have a stroke of some of that 10% genius? Do you have something that could take us to a place where we can't go? Two is, do you have grit and drive? We had a guy, Dave Portnoy does pizza reviews, One Bite, everybody knows the rules. We had a guy who wanted a job as a video intern, and he custom created a pizza box and wrote his resume on the entire pizza box, printed, like produced it, had a pie put inside, and had it delivered. And we hired that kid because that was incredible creativity. It was incredible initiative, and he understood that he needed to break through, and he wanted to break through, and he had the effort to do it. So those are the qualities I like. I like people who are leaning forward, people who have initiative. It's surprising. I think you interview a lot of people and you get very few thank you notes. Like, you get very few like, hey, I loved that, or I totally disagreed with what you said, or I'm interested in having a further conversation. So I like to see what people come up with and to see if they really care about making this place great. I think the biggest mistake I can make as a CEO is to hire the wrong person. I think that scares me every day. And so thinking about who joins this and what they make of it is really important.
Yeah, hire slow, fire fast,
Yep.
for sure, and do it obviously in the most compassionate way you can when it doesn't work out. But when I think about Barstool, and Peter Chernin is one of his holdings at Barstool. I mean, talk about an early young stock that I would love to be a part of if I had an opportunity to deploy capital into a place, into a company like Barstool with the leadership that you and Dave and Dan have. But when I think about what this younger man from Australia did about 26 years ago, a guy by the name of, what's his name? Hold on, let me see.
Australia.
I cannot forget this. Anyways, I'm going to go back. All of you are going to remind me. 26 years ago, there was this fourth company. Now, you had the big three companies, right? You had ABC, NBC, CBS. And then this young man in Australia, help me, all at once. What?
Yeah.
Rupert Murdoch said, I'm going to create this. He's my boss. He would kill me if I forget his name. I'm still flustered about the Fenway thing.
Yeah, I hear you.
He came up with this fourth, call it, station, and everyone laughed at him. It was like, you'll never break through. It's been the big three forever. Peter, you're crazy, 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 crazy. All of a sudden, he got the NFL deal. And everyone said, oh, shit. Now it's the big four. And the big four has stood for forever and ever. And obviously, you saw the transaction with Bob Iger and all of that, over $60 billion. But when I think about Barstool, it has started one way. Now, when Fox came out, they had In Living Color, and they had a few shows, and that was about it. When I think about Barstool, and I think about Barstool 10 years from now, 20 years from now, it's probably going to be wholly different. How do you see Barstool in 5 years from now, 10 years from now?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that you've been someone who has seen the potential of what this place can be, and I actually think being an athlete, being a personality, being an investor is the confluence of a real money opportunity, content, which is, I'm in love with content, and then sports, obviously, which is our core. So when I joined Barstool in 2016, as I'd mentioned, there were 12 people. They were blogging, and we had 3 podcasts, very nascent podcasts. We now own and operate 35 brands. We do millions of downloads in podcasts every single month. We're making millions and millions of video views. We have a commerce business. We have a lifestyle business. We have an amateur boxing business. We are the ultimate, I think, D2C company, because what Barstool has always been about is its relationship with its fans and being honest and truthful in the content and endeavoring to be funny in the content that it makes for that audience. And the example I would use to go to the future is when I got to Barstool, I had gone to see Facebook. And I had a meeting with the head of sports at Facebook. And he basically patted me on the head after the meeting and said, good luck with your regional sports blog. I took this meeting as a courtesy for the Chernin Group. You've had your 30 minutes, good luck to you. And so I was like, okay, game on. And Facebook Live was launching at the same time. And I was like, we will be dominating Facebook Live. And we went on Facebook Live for hours every day. I mean, I'm not sure the content was that great, but we were on there for hours. We broke it constantly because we would send so many fans to watch what we're doing. And the second thing that happened around the same time was we moved into our New York office, and we couldn't get DirecTV because the building in front of us is very tall. So we had to stitch together a bunch of Rokus, which ultimately created a 3-minute delay. And so when we turned the camera on our crew, and they're watching you and others on Fox and ESPN and CBS and NBC, what happened was our fans knew what happened in the game before we did. And we had no rights, so what the rights became was our opinion and reaction to the play. So it created for me this aha moment of shit, this is it. This is what content is going to be like. It's going to be people's reaction to what's happening and their commentary on what's happening in sports, not just the sports itself. And that ultimately is going to be the ultimate second screen experience, which is what I want to own. So in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, I want to have more share of a 20-year-old feed. I think all time is being spent on Instagram and Twitter and, to a degree, Snapchat and Facebook. I want more time on that feed. I would like more share of wallet. I want to create products or to partner with companies who make products that our audience loves and that they want. I went into a Goop store yesterday, and I was like, Gwyneth Paltrow has thought of everything for someone like me. There's makeup, there's healthcare, there's stuff for your kitchen, there's clothing, there's accessories. She has created a world in Goop that's about luxury for 30-something, 30, 40-something woman. I want to create that same thing for Barstool because we understand that 18 to 27-year-old guy, and what else can we make for him? What places can we create for him? What entertainment can we develop for him? So those are the things I spend a lot of time thinking about. I think my question to you would be, you sit in such an interesting perch. How do you see the worlds coming together? The internet, big media, consumer products, technology, how do you see that?
It's interesting, as you're talking, I'm always wondering, because I'm 43 now, and I learned most of my social media tricks from my daughters, who are 14 and 11.
You're very good at it.
And thank you, and they just rag the crap out of it, which I love. But I think there has to be kind of a fearlessness about it, right? And we came up in a world where George Steinbrenner would say, less is more, don't talk, hallway conversations, hard line, no cell phones. I mean, that's what we were taught by our teachers. And it's counterintuitive to think about, put it out first, do it, say it, and it's the ramifications are some of us run public companies, we're partners in different things. There's an incredible, NDAs all over the place. So in the world that this group participates in, for me, the biggest challenge is how do you get from this world and marry your world? And I guess as you're talking, I'm thinking, how do we bring value to this audience? And is there anything that this audience, even if you're in your 60s, 70s, or 80s, that you can do with content or social media or LinkedIn that can help drive value to their business? And I think I'm going to try to answer that. The answer is yes. And you do it by storytelling, and you do it by inspiring, and you do it in hopefully your ROI comes down the line. But I'm a big believer of, give of yourself first.
Yeah.
Give value and worry. I've learned through my career the 90% rule. And the 90% rule is, I believe that in the first contract that I sign with someone, I just want 90%. Keep 100. I want you happy, and then I want to give you 130% of value. And over time, it's going to create a good culture and good energy, and you will be so excited to do deal 2 and 3. I think so often we get in, especially with our young ones and our kids, we live in the Shark Tank era where we were saying, you have drivers saying, I want a 5% stake of your company. And you're just like, just drive the car, please. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
It's the culture that everybody wants everything first, and not go to the business school, not put in 10 years, not understand coding or whatever set of skills you have. People are in a hurry. So I think if you lead with great value for your partner and don't take everything off the table immediately, don't be in such a rush, I think ultimately that helps you down the future.
I agree with that. I think one of my first tests when I got to Barstool was, could we live on someone else's air? And I, to be honest with you, wasn't sure. Stooley's tweet or text me or DM me all the time of like, I can't believe you have a partnership with A-Rod. So it's only been 3 years, at least in my tenure. So it's cool to see that we can function with big personalities and celebrities and notable people. But also, one of my first things was, can we live elsewhere in a place that we don't control? And we had some success with that, and we had some absolute failures with that. And from my vantage point, I agree with you. I think leaving a little bit extra and a little bit for someone to want to come back, I find that in talent negotiations, partner negotiations, partnerships in general, which is, if you're a little bit generous at the outset and agree to what you're trying to do, real things can happen. If you're so spent from the X's and O's and the cents and the dollars, you're bitter and you're not wanting your partnership to succeed from the get-go. And so, we've also really held that dear, and also to be sure that we negotiated partnerships whereby we could over-deliver, and we would over-deliver, and we would have fun over-delivering. Like, we have a huge partnership with NASCAR, and Barstool Sports has had a pretty dramatic effect on the ratings for Fox in key Barstool markets. But we've also created a ton of attention around what's happening in Talladega or what's happening in Daytona. And we've had a lot of fun with it. So it hasn't felt like work. It hasn't felt like partnership. It's felt like, God, these people are giving us this great opportunity to go have a front row seat in the track car, or what's the car? The pace car. That we were getting such an opportunity, and how do we make the most of that, and how can we grow from it, and how can we grow our partners through it? So I see the world the same way. Do we want to open it up to questions?
Sure.
Do people have questions? Looks like you're stuck with me, Alex.
I can't see in the back.
Question. You spoke a lot about the Barstool demographic, using the word he. Do you guys see your core customer and kind of consumer of content as a male?
I think predominantly it's male. I think that's changing. If you were to look at, in 2012 at Barstool, we had maybe 3 to 4 million uniques, and we had the 3 podcasts, as I'd mentioned, and we weren't really doing video. Our consumption was 85+% male. We've made a huge effort to diversify our talent base, including hiring women, and we've hired some phenomenal women and female personalities. Call Her Daddy is a sex and relationship podcast, very out there, very raunchy, very much a rocket ship. That's 70-30 female. Chicks in the Office, we had 2 women. When I got to Barstool, I was the only woman, and I remember we would have friends of mine or people I was trying to do business with stop by, and one of my greatest fears was when they had to use the bathroom, because I just was like, oh, this is so gross, and like they're never going to do business with us if they use the bathroom at Barstool Sports. But the worst part of it was the guys, to give me shit, would say, chicks in the office, there's chicks in the office. So I was like, all right. So we turned that into a show. We hired 2 female interns, Rhea and Fran. We stuck them in the merch closet. They didn't know a lot about sports. Fran is an Eagles fan, which I would consider not knowing a lot about sports. And Rhea loved entertainment. And they started doing a daily show on Instagram called Chicks in the Office. That's 85% female. Ellie Schnitt joined us from Chicago. She's kind of the queen of basic Twitter. She has a 99% female audience. So we're diversifying that audience by and large. And also our audience, which I think is true for most media companies, I'm not sure they realize it, is that our podcast audience is different than our Instagram audience, which is different than our Snapchat audience, which is different than the blog, which is different than Rough and Rowdy, which is our boxing brand. So we think about all different audiences. I tend to characterize them as guys because they're predominantly male, but really we just want to make people laugh. And if it's a girl or a guy or someone from the Northeast or Southwest, like, we're just happy to have you.
You know, it's interesting when you talk about happy to have you. I mean, you know, Alex is here, is a great young investor, but ultimately, like, once you get to the major leagues, there's 750 players. There's 25 in the Yankee clubhouse.
Yep.
Once you get to a certain level and you're here at a place like this, everybody does pretty much the same thing. Over time, it's never going to be like this. Whether it's investing, whether it's hitting home runs or batting average, it's truly like this, right? And you just hope that it's, you know, not as this. That's just the reality of things. But ultimately, you have to be able to invest in people that you like and that you trust. Because if someone's going to give you a 14% return consistently and is going to be a pain in your ass, or someone is going to give you a 12%, but you're really going to be enjoyable, it's going to be an enjoyable experience, it's someone that you trust, it's someone that you can grow from, then 10 out of 10 times, I'm going to go with the 12%. I'd rather make 10% in something that I understand and I'm passionate about than make 18% in gas and oil or something from Russia that I have no idea or have no passion for it. Because at the end of the day, a lot of the LPs that all of us are dealing with, they're in the stay rich business, not in the get rich business. And ultimately, they have to feel comfortable with the principles and the team. And I would spend more time on team and your story and your track record and make it an enjoyable experience, always bringing value to your partner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And I think you said it well with kind of the change from the clubhouse where everything was controlled and sensitive and private and quiet. And the world is very loud right now. So if you want to create value, you know, one of the things I think is so great about your success is that you've chosen success in very hard, messy, once-in-a-lifetime businesses. Media is messy and complicated. Content is messy and complicated. Health and wellness is messy and complicated. Being a star athlete is messy and complicated. But it's also so rewarding to the not getting rich alone. And I think that that's one of the things that we see is when it all, you know, what's changed about the world is that anyone can have a conversation about anything at any given time and any given way. And people like that and people don't like that. It certainly makes people uncomfortable. But there's value in seeing that heat and that interaction. And so, you know, I look at that a lot. When every single piece of content that we put out, we look instantly at what the reaction is. Do people love it? Do they hate it? Are they commenting on it? Are they rating and reviewing what we're doing? When we launched The Corp, I think we had ambition that we would be the #1 business podcast. We had real ambition that we were going to create a very valuable product that for young people who were interested in business or interested in sports or interested in entrepreneurship, that we could give them a lens on that no one else was going to give them, mostly because we're so free and open, and obviously your star power and your vantage point and experience with that, Alex. But what became so interesting and the reason we became #1 overall was, one, we created a great product, but two, our audience is conditioned to rate and review and share and comment again and share it again. And so I think that that's also part of, you know, what's happening in the internet is also hopefully what's happening with people and partners, whereby there's real direct dialogue, there's real feedback, there's authentic engagement. You're blunt about whether you like something or don't like something. We're pretty ruthless about whether our content works or not, because the truth is there right in front of us. Someone likes it or someone doesn't like it. So I think those are important things as you think about winning culture and winning partnerships and winning in business. I love what you had to say, which is you don't want to win alone. I kind of like to slog through a little mess to have a win. But it's the process that matters, and that's what's really valuable.
So it's funny, when I just came back from the Masters, and when I go to these universities to give talks, or I taught a 3-week class at Stanford Business School, like, they don't know me for my career, they don't know me for my fiance, they know me for Barstool. And it's this incredible audience that is just so captive. And Barry Sternlicht came on the show, and he was fantastic. And he said, "I got to see you." So we went out to dinner. He goes, "What in the world is this Corp thing? And what the hell is Barstool?" I said, "Why?" He goes, "Everywhere I go, they say, you're the Barstool guy. You're the Barstool guy. You were with A-Rod." And it was interesting because Barry Sternlicht is one of the greatest investors of our generation, right? Starwood, One Hotel, and many other things. But he talked to an audience, millions of kids from age 14 to 34, and that audience, they're not watching him on CNBC, they're not watching him on Bloomberg, they're not watching him anywhere, but now they are. So he's like, my kids' friends think I'm actually cool now. and it's interesting, and the lesson for me there was, I'm a traditionalist, right? I'd rather say, let's just do Fox, or let's do CNBC, or let's just keep it tight, and because we are business people. And Jeff Lee, who is our COO, raise your hand, Jeff. One of the smartest young men I've ever met, and lucky to have him at the Corp, is he said, "Alex, we don't speak to any kids under the age of 34. In baseball, the average fan is 58 years old and white, and a boy. So I think there's an incredible audience for us." So I said, "Okay, let's give it a shot." And then he said, "They have an incredible CEO who I really like." I said, "Okay, I'm still listening." The point is, in years past, I would have said, "Hell no. No, it's too dangerous. No, no, no." And I followed their lead, and it's been a great partnership. So sometimes not sprinting to no and just having a little bit of open mind has worked for me, and maybe can work for you.
Is there a question?
Hi, I'm Renee. My question's for Erica. You mentioned some stuff about women and based off the last question, and my question for you is something like the podcast where you said they're kind of thrown in the room and you film them and it's women and they're whatever, 90% women. What are your thoughts on more of shows? Like today, a lot of influencers have their following based on makeup tutorials or gaming streamers on Twitch because they're being watched playing a video game. I find that maybe Barstool Sports could do more like show-based, comedic, following sports, female episodes.
Yep.
Especially, like, I get that you post it on Instagram, and you can watch it, but it is a podcast. And so I guess my question is, what about making like your own kind of version of like a Funny or Die platform?
Sure. So I think I would answer that a couple ways. It's a great question, which is really how do we think about platform and format, right? And how do we think about that for women or really any type of personalities? The Corp doesn't matter. One of the things that I have sought to protect at Barstool and have loved about Barstool and why I went to Barstool. When I joined Barstool, everyone was like, "You are committing career suicide. You're never going to work again. It's not going to work. This thing is going to fail. There are a bunch of cretins. Why on earth would you ever go do that?" I got fired from 2 boards. People disassociated with me incredibly fast. And I loved that because I was like, all right, like I have no choice but to win, and there's no looking back and there's no looking around because there's no one there. So I loved that. And what I loved about Barstool was that there was no agenda. There really wasn't, when Dave Portnoy or Dan Katz or Keith Markovich or Kevin Clancy or Riggs, any of our then guys, they didn't come to work every day saying, "I'm doing a 30-minute show, I'm speaking this part, I'm doing this, that, or the other thing." There were no producers. Everyone who worked at Barstool had to write, edit, produce, do social, like everyone did everything. And as a result, it's been somewhat agendaless. Like we've grown things organically very well because they've happened from people who have initiative or creativity or that spark. And in the case of Fran and Rhea, it was a 1-minute show on Instagram, right? Which, to be honest with you, for the audience I care about, 1 minute is 30 minutes. And the whole economics of media are going to change because the 1 minute is as impactful as 30 minutes because nobody's watching 30 minutes. But to your point, one of the things I've really sought to do is to find a way to better productize what we have. How do we think about long form? How do we partner with people like Alex Rodriguez? How do we do Twitch? We're playing with TikTok. We play with Twitch. We're on any platform we can get our hands on. We are on that platform. And then we kind of play for a while and see what we can evolve and grow from there. We were just nominated for an award for our college football show. We do a long-form television show called Barstool Sports Advisors, which is basically like gambling picks and mystery theater, like all mashed up into one. So format will evolve, and we'll continue to evolve with it. But I agree with you 100%, which is there's a lot of room for us to improve and to grow in that.
Previously, you both described yourselves as CEOs that love to get into the weeds. So how do you balance that detail orientation with kind of creating the vision that you need to do, as well as giving your key people room to maneuver and do their own creative things, even if you don't necessarily agree?
Do you want to go? You want me to go? It's a balance. I would say it's a constant, not negotiation, but a constant just seeing where the sands fall and where your footing is. So I care a lot about the product. I am obsessed with our product. And I will stop at nothing to make sure, are we posting things the right way? Have we put it on all platforms? Is it tagged the right way? Do we have a sponsor? Are we converting the T-shirts the way we should? So I really care. I think that there's a place where you do it once and you show how you do it and how much you care and how hard you're willing to work and how detailed you're willing to be. And then if you hire the right team, they'll take that and move it into a place that you couldn't get to. So that's my optimal ideal scenario and one that I really strive for. It doesn't work like that every day, but I think it's important to be in the weeds because it's the details that ultimately build your brand, and it's the details that ultimately, inform your product. And I personally am on a little bit of a journey like that, whereby, when I joined Barstool, there wasn't that many people, so there was a lot of details, there was a lot of building, and now there's more. We have infrastructure, we have great people, we have talent, so it's less about dotting every I and crossing every T. But it's a constant balance. My hope is that I can find the right people who are better than I am at those things, and that I spend as much time looking out and about as possible, and then we start to experiment in those things, and we repeat it again and again and again.
Yeah, again, for me, learning from some great managers like Joe Torre and Lou Piniella, again, going back to that clubhouse, it goes back to hiring great people. At a macro level, you're bringing in great people, and then it's really spending a great deal of time coaching and shaping and bringing them into meetings, big meetings, bigger meetings than they're used to coming in. And then it's really understanding that everybody has a voice. I like bringing in everybody into a meeting, and I will purposely call on the young PA that's just out of college. And usually she's like, what? She's usually 23, or him. And understand that if no one ever passes you the ball, you're never going to be ready to shoot. So what made Magic Johnson such a great point guard is, Alex, look out. Boom, hit you in the face. Okay, you weren't ready. But the next time you will be. And the next Monday morning meeting, you're coming with a different attitude. So I need everybody captured. I need everybody captivated. And by the way, if Alex is a junior kid that's just came out of Penn or whatever school Alex went to, He can kill a deal just like Jeff Lee, or just like Lane, or just like Erin. Say hi, Erin. She is our deal killer. We call her the wet blanket. She doesn't like any deals. But, Erin's been in banking, 20 years. Lisa over there, she runs ventures for us. But the idea is that I'm not going to go to the big guys or the big women that have been around for 25 years. Everybody has a role and everybody can play. And again, it's about shared economics. When you come into our firm, 88 to 90% of your bonus is on how the team does. 10% is on how you do. So the idea is that if I put Lisa on a project over here and Erin on a project over here, they're going to be like, well, I don't like Lisa because she has the better project, and Erin's like, this is really not a profit center. And now no. We want them to win equally. So if this company makes, $10 and yours makes $1, we made $11, and that's how we create a bonus structure. So it creates a culture where we all want to help each other, and when you pick up the phone, I'm going to say, yeah, your deal is just as important as my deal because we're all in this together. And again, when I talk about creating culture, that's my job, is to create an incentive plan that everybody wins together and feels good about coming to work every day.
I love that.
There's one right there.
Question for Alex. Alex, it seems like you've had a lot of success creating a business out of your brand and out of your personal portfolio, and it strikes me that there aren't many baseball players who have preceded you in that respect. It's mostly been former basketball stars like Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, and now you've got LeBron James creating a business empire, Kevin Durant also. And I'm curious what you think are the recipes for success for athletes who are now earning unprecedented amounts of money to create enduring businesses that last beyond their playing career. And do you think that more baseball players and other athletes, aside from NBA superstars, will succeed at that?
Yeah, great question. So first of all, just some data. So the average career in baseball is 5.5 years. You make about 90% of your income from age 20 to 30. And less than 5% of those 750 players, less than 5% have a college degree. So I'm not a stockbroker, but with that information alone, I was short the stock. And in 1994, I entered the league. It was $1 billion industry. $1 billion. 1994, $1 billion. Today's $10 billion. When it was $1 billion, the players, we'll call Erica, the players, was taking home 60%, and we'll call Alex, the owners, taking home 40%. Today, it's $10 billion, and it's opposite. Now Alex is taking home 60%, and Erica's taking home 40%, and trending the wrong way, trending more like the NFL. That's concerning because I like a more democratic approach, more like the NBA, where economics and revenues are spread evenly. That's good for business at a macro level. You have to be humble enough to be able to do the work. Just because you hit home runs doesn't mean you are going to understand business. And I think a lot of athletes, you can get into a God complex where you feel like home runs, I can create great business. It doesn't happen that way. Also, hiring people that are, you're the smartest guy in the room or woman in the room is not a good idea. We've talked about always hiring people that are much smarter than us. And I think if you have the same discipline, this 10,000 hours, and you apply it to business with great partnerships, look, if you're Tom Brady, you can't have Dan Marino and Joe Montana and Joe Theismann. That doesn't make any sense. But if you have Joe Montana, who do you want? You want Jerry Rice. If you're Magic Johnson, you don't want Isaiah Thomas, you want Kareem. You have to have a complementary set of skills. It goes back to that Warren Buffett-Tom Brady combination. And I think athletes have to be able to collect great people and great partners and go from there. So I'm hopeful, but I wouldn't say I would make a bet on it.
So I think that ends our time. Thank you so much. Thank you,
Thank
Alex.
you.